with Mary Ann. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have just an empowering show coming right up with none other than Florence Ann Romano, otherwise known as a Windy City nanny. Now, Florence Ann is a former nanny who has always had a special place in her heart for children. She's worked over 15 years as a nanny, beginning as a mommy's helper at the age of 11. Florence Ann also shares her experiences in her beautifully illustrated children's book, Nanny and Me, which helps children with the transition of being taken care of only by their parent to then include a nanny in their home. Florence Ann is here today to talk to us about how to deal with very poor childhood behaviors and what to expect, and also her book, Nanny and Me. So let's welcome to the show, Florence Ann.
Thank you for having me. So thrilled to be here.
What a joy it is to have you here, and my goodness, I mean, you're always making these great, blog posts, and people are having you on their shows. So as soon as I saw just about you, I thought, gosh, I have to talk with you because that's such a huge job.
Oh, goodness. Well, thank you. You flatter me so. My face is, 5 shades of tomato, but, it's so fun. I have a great time doing it when I get to talk to wonderful people like yourself. It's just the best part of it, so thank you.
Well, I think, anytime we look at bringing up the next generation, it's such an important responsibility. And so it leads me to kind of question, it's like, gosh, what started you in this business? What made you feel like, gosh, I want to be this awesome nanny?
Well, what's so funny is I was always kind of baby crazy when I was younger, and I used to tell my mom, please take me to the hospital to get my baby. And what I meant by that was, please take me to the toy store so I can pick out a baby doll. And she would usually take me, and then I'd come home and I'd make little birth certificates for all my baby dolls. So, I'm telling you, I just was baby crazy from a young age. And when I turned 11, my mom allowed me to start being a mother's helper. So friends of our family or people in the neighborhood, I would go and kind of shadow the moms and see what they did in their daily life with their kids. And that's really how I learned to be a babysitter. I really cut my teeth on that. And then after the kind of babysitting phase passed, and I became a nanny. I just loved children and loved that connection to them. I never thought it would end up becoming a personal brand of mine necessarily, but truthfully, childcare has changed so much, especially now in the new millennium, and I just felt like there was a real platform there about childcare, and I wanted to redefine what nanny meant in the world today.
Well, and I know, and we were chatting about this a little bit earlier, that you have a book that's been out, Nanny and Me, and I think it's just so well written, and so many people, I'm sure, just have loved it, over the last couple of years, and it's one of these books that, regardless of when it's written, the information is timeless.
I appreciate you saying that. I always say that too. There's really no expiration date on a book like this. And the point of me writing it was I thought there was a big disservice being done in the children's book department. I didn't see anything that helped children understand why they have a nanny or caretaker in their life, and no book to really help them explain that transition to parent, explain that transition to their child. So I wrote Nanny and Me to help children learn about that transition, to help it be less traumatic for the child, and also to help bring the parents peace of mind and that they were making the right decision for their family. So it's interesting. I hear a lot of different feedback from people, but one thing I hear all the time is it's become a very popular baby shower gift for my friends and family. So I'm always happy to hear that.
Well, I'm sure, as you're working with a new family, you probably have the kids looking at you going, who is she? What is she doing here?
Right, exactly. And it's hard to explain that person, that stranger, right, coming into your home. And, children tend to compare themselves to other kids at school. And if they have parents that, stay home with them, whether it's the mom or the dad or whatever the case may be, they wonder, do my parents not really love me as much as these other parents do? They don't want to stay home with me, they don't want to take care of me. And that's not the case at all. So it's a way for children to understand, like I said, the transition, but also the story is told from the child's perspective. So it's relatable in that capacity to them. So don't feel like they're left out. And that this person that's coming into their home is going to be someone to help take care of them, love them, beautiful memories to create with them, a lot of fun. So it's really putting the emphasis on how important this addition is to the family.
Now, so do nannies provide more of like a buddy relationship with the children as opposed to a parental relationship?
That's a very fine line, I would say, with all families. I know for me, I never felt of myself as a very big disciplinarian with the children, though I did discipline. I didn't feel that was my number one job. Depending on the relationship the nanny and the parents have, that's going to vary. I say that you always want to make sure that you have that conversation out in the open right away when you're vetting the nanny, when you're deciding whether or not you're going to hire the nanny, because there are going to be different definitions of what they feel discipline is. The parents might have a very different definition than the nanny does. Perhaps they believe in corporal punishment and the nanny doesn't, or vice versa. So you do need to make sure you're on the same page about that, because the nanny is an extension of the values of the family that they are working for. So if they want the nanny to get involved with disciplining to a degree, then that's absolutely acceptable. But if that's something you're not comfortable with as the nanny, then that's probably not the family to work for.
That's good advice. Well, you talked about, you kind of just brought this up a little bit, so I have to ask. So you talked about there being differences with parenting, especially with millennials. So what's the difference between that and, let's say, like the baby boomers?
Yes, there are some big differences. I would say that one of the biggest differences I'm seeing with the baby boomers versus maybe the more millennial parent is there's a sense of independence that these children are being raised with. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but to elaborate what I mean, there's a very different world today for our children where they don't want as much competition. There's an award for every kid, just for participating. There's a lot of values that have changed regarding the baby boomers to millennials. And it's not necessarily all things I agree with. I think that we can't coddle the children so much where they aren't going to be prepared to be in the real world. And I am 32 years old, and my youngest sister is 22 years old. And I'll tell you, the 10-year difference between us is quite big when it comes to just kind of what is expected of you as an adult. A lot of millennials tend to think that there's an entitlement that's attached to that. And I'm not saying that every child is like that, but I would hate to see us start to perpetuate that trend. I think children do need to realize that there's still a respect and a work ethic that is needed at a young age, and they need to learn that and cut their teeth on that when they're young. And I'm starting to see that fade out a little bit. So there's a lot of differences with parenting, whether or not you're part of the baby boomers or you're part of the millennial explosion. But it's really getting back to kind of some old school values of respect and hard work and motivation and kindness and all sorts of things. That's one positive I'll give the millennials, is there is a much more tolerant world regarding the millennials' perspective, which I think is something, our world always needs a little softer lens and more compassion. But it does vary, and I feel that we need to find the moderation is kind of what I'm looking for right now. I think there's just extremes happening, and we need to find the middle.
Well, and so on that, how does social media play a part in all that?
I always say, I don't have children of my own yet, but I always say, oh my gosh, I worry about having kids with social media because adults are addicted. My father can't get enough of Facebook, and we're like, please deactivate that account. You just need to be there. Please stop it. It's such a different world where everything is become very narcissistic. It's whatever you're feeling at the moment. God forbid you don't tell someone about the Diet Coke that you're drinking. Oh my goodness. It's just a very different place that we live in. And social media can be great for different things, but it can't be an obsession. It can't be the place that you look for all of your inspiration, spend all of your time. One thing I like to say about social media versus when I was a nanny, Nanny and Me doesn't have any technology in the book, and that's because there wasn't any. I don't think you miss it. When you look at it, oh gosh, no one's on their cell phone or their iPhone in this book. It's so unrealistic. But the truth is, you look at these entrepreneurs, right? You look at these entrepreneurs, these people, these inventors. You look at who invented Facebook. These people are thinking outside the box. And the way to do that is by using your imagination. And we have to make sure that we're still encouraging our children to use their imaginations. And you're not going to necessarily find that sitting behind a tablet. So it's, again, going back to moderation. I'll never be someone that ever says technology is a bad thing. No, it's fantastic. But again, everything in moderation, and still don't lose those old school values of getting your kids outside and playing and seeing where their minds wander. That's a beautiful thing, and don't take that away from our kids. I really hate to see that go.
I think there can be a lot of curiosity that happens when kids are out playing and being able to be outside in nature, and kind of there's a wonder and kind of a magical land that opens up for them that they don't really get when they're attached to devices.
So true. I used to have this game I played. Of course, can you tell that I naturally led my cul-de-sac in whatever game we were playing? It was always the leader of the pack. But we played this great game, and I always tell parents to suggest this to their kids. I called it Chalk Town, and basically we took chalk and we went on each other's driveways and we drew these huge elaborate towns where we all owned stores, and then in the cul-de-sac we had cones and bicycles for like our little metropolitan area where we'd be driving around on our bikes, and it was hours and hours and hours of fun, and our parents loved it because when it rained we would just get to rebuild the town again, and there's more hours of fun that the kids get to have. So it's just like silly stuff like that, but that's not something that expires, right? That's something that children still enjoy today, and it's just giving them the opportunity to do it.
Well, and I know you talk about that as well, just the importance between play and imagination and a child's development, and just how important that is.
It's so important. You want children to be stimulated in different ways. And I want to go back to this. I'm not a person that is ever going to, slap hands at technology, because it is really useful. There are so many great ways to use tablets and technology. Baby Einstein is one of my favorite things for kids to watch. I think it's so darling, and I think it is very educational. But I always like to give this example. A mom, a babysitter, a nanny, father, you're in the grocery store, you have 30 minutes to get everything you need, you got to do it, and you're like, hey, I need to concentrate, I don't need people pulling things off the shelves. You throw that tablet, and not throw it at the child, give the tablet to the child, and let them just kind of get immersed in maybe, 30 minutes of their favorite show, or that Baby Einstein, like I said, or something. You can get what you need done. Technology is a great way of being able to compartmentalize and multitask for parents. It's just making sure that the time is allocated properly. That's all.
Yeah, that you're able to do that. And gosh, I'm so curious about this too. So you talked a little bit like the babysitter, the nanny stigma. What is that for those of us that don't know what that is?
Oh, yes, there's this whole underground world of, all these rumblings about what's really happening with the nannies and babysitters. Well, it's very easy to understand, truthfully, hopefully, when I explain it this way. You look at social media, you look at celebrities, influencers. This is a big deal now in our world today. And look at the magazine, every single time they talk about a nanny, they are usually talking about a nanny cheating with a spouse.
Aren't they? Aren't they?
They are every single time, and it drives me crazy because those of us who had a moral compass when we were nannies and never thought of being a homewrecker, we get a bad rap for that now, and that's still what is happening with the definition of nanny today, and it scares people. And nannies also tend to get this reputation for just working for very wealthy, affluent families, like Upper East Side of New York. These are parents that don't want to raise their kids, and they just hand them over to a nanny. This is not the world we live in today. 60% of families in America, 60, of families in America today have a nanny or a babysitter or child care of some kind. And that statistic rises in line with the employment rate. So as long as there are jobs, as long as there are people working, there's going to be someone taking care of your child. And so it's terrible to think that nannies get this reputation now because the celebrity world has slandered it to be so. We really need to redefine what nanny means today. It's really anybody that's taking care of your child in your absence. And it's not someone that's going to sleep with your husband or your wife. I mean, it's just the truth. It's terrible that that's the narrative that you're seeing out there, and you're hearing out there about about nannies.
Well, and so on that topic, and just kind of to expand on that, so is there like a dress code that, that nannies should have, or that parents should require? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, always using your best judgment as a nanny, and we also have male nannies now, so we have to make sure we give them some love too. We've got male and female nannies, so it's a different world in that capacity as well. But if the family you're going to work for is going to require a uniform of you, that's absolutely acceptable. Now, I'm not saying they're requiring you to wear a G-string. I mean, that's not what I'm saying. I want you to be properly attired, and if anything inappropriate were to come up in a conversation, absolutely don't work for that family. That's a huge red flag. But yes, a uniform is completely acceptable. But if they don't require that, then I would say to nannies and nannies out there, just use your best judgment as a role model for these children. You don't want to be dressing too sexy or showing too much or anything like that, anything suggestive. Just remember that you are supposed to be a role model and someone for these kids to look up to. So make sure you are putting your best foot forward and communicating the right message.
And especially when we have little girls that get such confusing messages, and young boys too, on what's acceptable and what's not. So we want to make sure that kind of hold that line for them.
It's true. Like I go back to, we have this world of influencers today, where they're watching reality TV a lot. These kids are watching a lot of different shows where they think that's the representation of how it should be or what it means to be beautiful or attractive, which is a whole different topic that we could get into about kind of how that influences children today. But regarding what they have in their home, it's up to you, the parent, to make sure that you're putting those parameters and boundaries in your family.
In the direction you want it to go. Well, and so what happens if you're kind of faced with, like, let's say, difficult children or children that are having really high behavioral issues? How do you handle that?
If your children specifically have behavior issues, that's going to be something you consider when hiring a nanny. Now, I actually just recently was consulting with a family about this. They have 3 children, and one of the children actually does have some behavior issues, and not anything that they were diagnosed with necessarily, like ADD or ADHD, just not the best listener, and just a little hyper, and kind of wants to push the boundaries. And so that can be difficult when you have children that have different different personalities, but you're going to find that truthfully in every family you go to. But when hiring a nanny, you want to make sure that that nanny is equipped to be able to deal with those different type of personalities with the children, especially if one of the children are going to need a little more special attention or a little bit more discipline, and make sure they're comfortable being able to do that. Not every nanny is. And if you have a child that's a little bit more difficult, you're going to probably need a nanny that's going to toe a firmer line. So you have to remember this when you're during the hiring process.
Well, and so how do you, properly vet a nanny that would be able to handle those situations?
Well, first things first, when you are hiring a nanny in any capacity, you really need to take the time to vet them properly. This is one of the reasons I see such a revolving door of nannies in childcare today, because they're not properly onboarding them, they're not properly interviewing them, and that's why they keep churning and burning through these nannies. So when you're looking for the right person for your home, you're going to first want to decide if you're going to use a service, if you're going to go online, use something like Care.com or Sitter City, or use an au pair service, or if you're going to go the referral route, see what's happening in your community, your church, your children's school, your friends, see if they have anyone. That's my favorite way to go. But then after that, when you start to get the resumes start to come in, you want to start doing your own research on this person, your own intel. Look on Facebook, look on Instagram, see what you can find in good old Google. See, technology is a great thing. I use it all the time, and this is a great way to use it. You go and do your own little secret spy and see what's going on there, because that's really who they are. When they think you're not looking, they're a great representation of themselves. And then once you actually get to the interview process, you want to think about the values of your family and how that's going to be an extension to that nanny and your children. So, for example, you mentioned a child that is a little bit, more wild and needs a little bit more discipline. You're going to want maybe to hire a former teacher. That would be a great nanny for you, someone who's used to having to handle a lot of different personalities in a school setting. And then, for example, special needs, for children with special needs. I have a brother who is autistic, and those children have a different set of needs than typical children. And maybe you need a nanny that's going to be certified to be able to work with your child that has special needs. So there are many different things to consider regarding the needs of your children and how that's going to correlate back to the nanny that you're going to choose. But again, it's really getting involved and not rushing the process and making sure that you're finding the right fit for your family.
Well, and so, this makes me just so curious. I don't have any children, but I've got lots of friends that have kids. I'm auntie to many, and it's perfect because I get to love them up, sugar them up, and give them back.
I understand that, for sure. I think all my friends said, I'm like, here you go, I'm sorry.
Up, dirty diaper, sorry, gotta go. No, I'm kidding. But, so I have an opportunity where I can really, minus the sugar too, I have an opportunity where I can at least have an impact in their lives, and so I enjoy them. They're just, wonderful young people. And so when we look at how we can impact young lives, what are some of the things that you have found that later on you're going, gosh, I didn't know that this would be so impactful, and it's touched my heart so much?
Oh, goodness. I could give you a million examples, but I'll give you one that really warms my heart. I'll probably cry at the end of the story because it makes me cry. I tell this story all the time. It still makes me cry. So when I was a nanny, I had a little girl that one of my nanny kids, and her parents happened to be very hard on her regarding education. She was a very, very smart girl. Oh, my gosh, smarter than I ever hoped to be. And I would help her with her homework, and I'd have to go run in the other room and call my friend and be like, can you help me? Because I have no idea what this answer is. And so she was so smart. And her parents just put a lot of pressure on her to perform very well. And one particular evening, she got so upset about the pressure that she was feeling, an impending test, I think, and she kind of made herself sick. And I laid in the bathroom with her, and she opened up to me about how she was feeling. And later that night when her parents got home, I sat down with them, and I said, we really need to talk. Something I'm feeling here with your daughter is hurting my heart, and I really want to be able to help her, so let's work on this together. I didn't want to come in there and accuse them of anything. I really wanted it to be a unified front, and I'm very happy to say that we did work on it, and I did bring it to their attention, and they did change their ways with her. And then fast forward many years later, she's now grown up and wonderful and amazing, like I always knew she would be. And a couple of years ago, I went to a wedding, and she was there with her friend that actually got married, and she came running up to me. I hadn't seen her in so long because she no longer lives in Chicago, and she ran up to me, gave me a big hug, and with tears in her eyes, she pulled back and looked at me and said, all these years later, you are still the voice in my head. And I started crying and, gave her a big hug and kiss and told her I loved her so much. And, that was a very full circle moment for me, where I realized that in these moments where, it was just me doing my job, making sure we were getting from one to the next, and that these kids were happy, that I had done something that she had carried with her all these years. And that right there is the holy grail. That's the jackpot.
That would be, just having those pieces that they take through with them throughout their entire lifetime, and that impact that you make. It's really like, that really just touch your heart.
No. It does. I didn't used to be a crier, but now in my old age, I've become quite the sobber. I'm just sobbing all the time.
The old age of 32, right?
I'll tell you, I feel like, what happened? All of a sudden, I got into that new decade of life, and it was like, here, this is what you have, a whole bunch of new issues.
But it's interesting because as we work through just different parts of our life, it's the kids pick up on it, and they learn so much from us, as we're kind of growing and evolving as well.
Right, they do, and that's why it's so important for us to remember that we are role models. You think they're not looking, you think they're not paying attention, and they are. And you can think that back on your childhood, I'm sure, but there are moments with your parents that stick out, and you tell them that years and years later, and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you remember that. But you do. There are weird things that just kind of stick in your brain. So you just want to be as careful as you can around kids, and make sure it's as positive and supportive as possible.
And you probably also try to instill with them a great sense of self-compassion, because it seems like that can be, if they feel like they're having parents nag on them or school or whatever the case is, just being able to have that compassion for themselves should be such a huge thing.
I think that's actually hit on something, a great topic, going back to what you said before about the difference between millennial parenting and baby boomer parenting. That's actually something I think millennials are doing right, is there is a lot more self-awareness and self-compassion, like you said, where people are taking more time to do the self-care and to teach the self-care from a young age. And that's very important regarding the evolution of a young person into a young, woman, young man, and then, adult. And so I think you said something great. That's so true about making sure that they have that love for themselves and that compassion for others.
Well, and you brought up something, we looked at it from a child's point of view, and you were so eloquent in how you addressed it, maybe how his parents were treating their daughter. How is it when you have highly reactive parents? How can you work with them in order to kind of get them to kind of tone it down a little bit so that, people in the room aren't fried?
It's a very interesting dance, the nanny and the parents do. It's a dance, where sometimes they're hiring a nanny that's just like them. Sometimes they're hiring, they want someone who's just as, like you said, reactive or hyper as they are. But sometimes they're hiring a nanny that's totally the opposite of them. And maybe that's the better option, because you're giving a child it's a different environment. That's the truth. Like I always say, today, look at how different family families are being built today. And sometimes you find that single parents are hiring nannies of the opposite sex because they want that child to have that influence. Perhaps it's a single mom. They hire a male nanny because they want the child or the children to have a male influence, or vice versa. And I think that's really interesting. It's a really interesting trend that I'm seeing happen. It's starting more and more. But that's an example of a difference that is a difference in the family. You're bringing in a deliberate difference. But if you are working with a family where you're having that kind of combative moment with the parents because you're just a little bit off kilter regarding, your points of view, like I said, it's a dance. You have to always remember that you are not the parent. You are the nanny. So you can't go in there and attack them for what they're doing. Now, if they're doing something very wrong and you're witnessing, abuse of some kind, then obviously you need to report that and get involved in that. You can't turn a blind eye to that. But you, as the nanny, need to remember that they still are making the rules of the house. And if you disagree with something, hopefully you have a transparent enough a relationship with them and you can sit down. Just don't attack. Just remember not to attack. Make it seem like it's their idea. That was always my big strategy. I was like, hey, you mentioned something a little bit ago, and then I kind of twisted a little bit and make it think, I'm giving away all my secrets now. Now all my former employees are going to be like, hey, now I didn't realize she was playing all those mind games with me. But, it's always in the best interest. It's in the best interest of the child, truthfully, it really is. So, it's like I said, it's a dance. You're not going to win, every single argument. You're not going to get your way each and every time. But as long as you, the parent and the nanny, are a unified front, you're going to have a very good, a very successful relationship.
Well, and just to kind of piggyback on that a little bit, I don't think you're giving away all of your secrets. You're just putting it in a way that they can actually hear you.
Exactly. You got to kind of, sometimes there's that defensive, wall that's up, and you got to get that down and just kind of keep it, calm and all that. I have a cousin that is absolutely off the wall all the time, and when I talk to her, I always keep it real calm because I'm trying to get her to match my energy. It's the same tactics you use on the kids. You use the same that I use with my friends too. They're like, are you treating me like a 5-year-old? I'm like, well, then don't act like one. Then I don't have to treat you like a 5-year-old. So, but hey,
if it works, it works,
Exactly. It's still human behavior. It's all the same thing.
Was this something that was intuitive for you or something you learned as you were going? Because most people, they may not have picked that kind of stuff up.
I do think it was baptism by fire for me. I've been a pretty even-keeled person most of my life, so I'm effervescent and hyper and all those things too, so I'm not saying that, I'm just cool all the time. Absolutely not true. You could ask anyone, I'm sure they'd be like, I have a rebuttal to that, definition of Florence Ann. But, no, I really did learn from the experience of all these different families, of all these different children. The best nannies are the ones that come with life experience because they're seasoned. They've seen a lot. They've heard a lot. They've experienced a lot. And that's what you want to bring to the table for your kids and expose them to different cultures and, educational opportunities and ideas and fun. So in dealing with children and dealing with the parents, I did learn it as I went. I've made plenty of mistakes, and you learn from those moments. But I think I've always had a little bit of a natural intuition when it comes to just helping people work through problems. And, problem solving always kind of came a little naturally to me, and loved listening to people and helping and giving advice. So it just kind of all married together very well in the profession of the nanny.
Yeah, well, you can tell that you're so passionate about what you do, and that carries obviously through your work. So the kids must just love you to pieces.
Well, you're so kind. I would have to poll them and see what everyone thinks. But one thing I can say is I laugh because we went from after-school snacks to after work drinks. And that's just a bizarre sight to see, is when you're like drinking a glass of wine with someone that you used to nanny for, and you're like, what? It's amazing. That, the one thing I have to say, I keep in touch with every single child that I nanny for. I go to their prom pictures, or, I'm there when they graduate, or something. I keep in touch with all of them just because they were all part of my life, and I just didn't want to let them go, totally. So, it's a great way to stay connected and watch them grow up still.
Yeah, indeed. Well, and it's kind of fun because, you can see their kids as they get older, and you kind of see the imprint, your fingerprints on the next generation.
Oh, gosh, don't make me cry now. I think think about that. If these children are getting married before me, then something is very wrong. Oh, boy.
No, it's okay. Don't even worry about that. Everyone has their own good time. Perfect timing,
I'll end up in the fetal position, emotionally tortured from this conversation. I'm just kidding. Oh, gosh, no. Oh, my gosh, I'm totally kidding. Oh, my gosh, so funny. Oh, so funny.
That is funny, but, but I get it. I mean, because I'm single. I had a dog, so, you just kind of, you're used to different situations, and it's just interesting. So I love how you've been able to just connect with these families and these children and make such an impact. What's like one time, and we've kind of talked about it a little bit, but like one instance where you're like, wow, something really changed because I was there and I helped move things forward, or I was a spark that led them to their passion?
I think I've seen it transpire in different ways with kids, but one of the things that comes to mind right now is it's in my book. It's in Nanny and Me, but I used to go into the kids' rooms every night and put them to sleep, and I would ask them where they wanted to go in their dreams, and they would tell me Disney World or Alaska or the Bahamas, wherever, and then I would create a dream that had that theme in it, and that location in it. And it was always such fun, and I loved it. And they had such a good time. And as they got older, they started actually, telling the stories themselves. And that was a great way for me to get them to kind of, use their imaginations. And one person, specifically one of the children, my nanny kids, she ends up becoming this beautiful writer. I mean, just a beautiful writer. And we talked about how that those moments at night, when, before she went to sleep, where she just kind of got to, experience this magical moment and use her imagination and find these words and descriptions, it really stuck with her. And so that was really cool to hear that something, just kind of a tradition that I had, done with all my nanny kids ended up somehow influencing them for a passion of theirs as an adult.
Oh, gotta love that. Really do. I mean, it's my friends and their kids, and I'm always having time going, okay, so, NASA's looking to hire in the next 10 or 20 years, so you can just get started right away. Oh, my God. Be the next astronaut,
She loves that. That's the best part. I have to say, I love holding little babies, and I always think, when I look in their little eyes, I always think to myself, what are you going to be? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? You're going to change the world in some way, or a little piece of the world. At least you're going to do something. And it's just cool to think about that, to project that dream for them before they even, can talk. It's fun. It's really fun.
I'm sure you've had a couple of them say, well, I want to be a daddy when I grow up, too.
Oh, yes. And they did. A couple of those girls did end up growing up and doing that. They just wanted so badly to do it. And it was so cute to watch. Watch them, and I'd see their pictures on Facebook with their nanny kids and stuff. And, you just get that moment of just like, oh, no, I taught them well. It's a full circle moment for sure.
Well, in every career that's out there, I mean, we can definitely use more people who care about people, so regardless if they are choosing to be nannies or caregivers or, it could be police officers or whatever it is that they're choosing to be in life, they can, having more caring people is such a big thing.
It's so true. I mean, you look at our world today, and there's so many things that can scare you, but Luke Bryan has a song out called Most People Are Good. I don't know if anyone knows this country song or a fan of country, but it's a beautiful song that talks about how, you turn on the TV and you see so much bad, but that most people you're going to find, have a beautiful thread of humanity through them and are using that to affect positive change in the world. And you're right. I mean, no matter what you decide to do, your vocation, from nanny to businesswoman to policeman to teacher, you want to make sure that you always have the best intentions and you come from a good place in your heart to be a role model for the next generation, or at least to be someone that is leaving the world in a better place than you found it. I mean, if you can think about that, then you're living your life by the right rules, I would say. But you're right. We need more people to actually actively think about how they are affecting positive change in the world.
Well, and we got a couple more questions before we are going to wrap things up here, because I could talk to you all day, but we will run out of time for sure.
Oh, I know. You've got to stop me. I know. I'll just keep on going, so I'll just...
Oh, boy, me too. This could be a problem.
No, I know. We're in big trouble.
And so with everything that you've seen, because you're so experienced at what you do, what is the number one thing that you would see as I don't want to necessarily say the problem, but a challenge that comes up that you see that a lot of families tend to face over and over again?
It's going back to that idea of the revolving door of child care. And I touched on it a little bit, but I'll elaborate on it a bit more, that they're not taking the time to properly vet the nannies. And the reason why they're running into trouble is because they don't know thyself. That's what they say, know thyself is the first rule. You have to know what you need in that family. You have to know what your values are. Are you going to have a nanny that is going to be a different religion than your family? Is that going to be a problem? What about politics? Are they going to be on the total other side of the aisle than you? Is that going to be a problem? What is their definition of education? Does that mean that they do their homework with them? Does that mean you take them out on field trips to the symphony or to the art institute or places like that? I mean, there are so many things to consider regarding what you want your nanny to be doing in your home with your children. And there's no way that you're going to be able to find the right person for your house if you don't know thyself. You have to take the time to evaluate what is important to you, and then you can actually start looking for that person to fit into the puzzle.
Yeah, because from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, because I had a dog, so I don't really know. But you can't have a house in turmoil with no rules and no expectations, and then expect a nanny to come in and just kind of clean everything up, can you?
Oh, girl, I've seen it. I've definitely seen it. They have no sort of discipline or routine or anything going on in that home. And then the nanny comes in, and they're like, okay, so this is a problem. And then we got shown in 911 with Joe Frost, where she came in and unruly kids. Well, that was definitely not made up. I've seen that firsthand. That there are families like that where they are at their wits' end. They don't know what to do. They need to bring in someone to help. And that's a very specific situation, though. But regarding the family that you're going to work for, yes, they may not have the best house rules in place, and they're asking for your help to sort through some routine issues or disciplinary issues. And that's no problem. And then you absolutely can do that and be a counselor for you in that. But you have to be very clear about that from the beginning in the interview process that that's what you're looking for.
Such great advice. I swear, Florence Ann, you are just like a fountain of great information.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been so fun.
So where can our listeners connect with you and learn more about all the great work you're doing?
Sure. So WindyCityNanny.com is my website, and you can purchase my book there, but you can also purchase it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, any major bookstore. But WindyCityNanny.com, you can visit it, and it links to my Facebook, and you can send me an email, and I always make a point of making sure that I write everybody back, and I love to hear from anyone with issues or just wants to tell a fun story or whatever the case may be. I'm here for you. Reach out anytime.
Oh, well, Florence Ann, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us here today.
It was so much fun. It was the best part of my day. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you, Florence Ann. It's been such a joy to spend this time with you. Again, if you're looking to connect with Florence Ann, you can do that at her website, WindyCityNanny.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Mary Ann. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Mary Ann is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Mary Ann will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Mary Ann airs every Thursday, Friday, and Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmaryann.com for more information.